Hello, my name is Roman Djindjihashvili and welcome to instructional opening video. Many years ago, I would say more than 20, maybe 25 years ago, I made my first 10 videos. They weren't DVDs yet. And one of the videos was crashing lines against Caro-Kann, Alekhine, and a couple of other openings. But you have to know one thing. Every opening theory, every variation in every opening, sooner or later gets outdated and is somehow loses the strength. So now, about 25 years later, I have to make few revelations. Out of these videos, we had very, very wide demand for these crushing line videos, and we couldn't make enough videos to satisfy the demand. Now, I want to make few corrections for some people that trying to play those variations. I'm not gonna say they are not good anymore. No, they are. But their significant adjustments were made based on powerful chess programs such as Rivka and number of others. Well, I have to go through some positions with a very careful analysis. Well, we have some good news and some bad news. The good news is that analysis that were made by me, very careful analysis, they are very credible because they double-checked and triple-checked by these powerful engines. And also they are good because I played those openings, those variations against very strong players. This is the good news. Then what might be the bad news? The bad news is, since all these moves were never played, and most of the variations, they were never played before, specifically the Alekhine defense. There were not too many simple games. But I found one very typical game that I played with Alekhine, that I played myself. This game is highly instructive, and we're going to go through this, and I hope you enjoy that. So let's start this opening revelations with Alekhine defense. We're going to be covering Alekhine defense, center counter, Caro-Kann, but let's start with Alekhine defense. E4, knight f6, e5, knight d5. In my opening recommendations, I say to play d4 and get opening advantage this way. But that will be very well-known variation. The variation that I had many years ago was c4, knight b6, c5. And knight c3. Well, there are several critical continuations here for black. In my opinion, and theory recommends as well as the best move, c6 move. But now, let's quickly go through a couple of other variations, such as knight takes c3 and e6. What can we say here? On knight takes c3, dc, d6. That's a natural move. The black wants to get rid of some white central pawns and also help themselves in developing bishop on f8 and equalizing the game. I have to point to you that some variations, they are so powerful for white here that since the last video I made many years ago, there is no corrections now. They are still as powerful and good. Queen b3 move, and now d takes c. Looks like the most natural move. Winning the central pawn, bishop c4 will be easily refuted by e6, and black is doing just fine, having an extra pawn. However, the critical move is bishop g5 that forces black to play one and only move, queen d7. That's a very clumsy, very ugly looking move, but that's the only move. Let's see why. Some move like h6 will lead to a complete disaster for black after bishop c4. Now taking bishop will lead to immediate checkmate. And f7 pawn cannot be protected because, well, it can be protected by playing f6, but that will lead to the same checkmate. So e6 cannot be played because queen is hanging. So in this position, black is totally busted. So what white has to do something about bishop c4 threat. f6 move is also leads to some great problems for black. Rook d1, attacking the queen. Now on bishop d7 there will be queen takes b7, and on knight d7 there is a problem kind of move that wins the game instantly. It's queen to e6. It's very important to block black's e-pawn. For example, if white plays bishop c4, then after e6, black is okay. At least they don't have any immediate danger. But queen e6 is kind of sealing black's pieces. And if f takes g, bishop c4, the game is over. There is a mate very next move with queen f7. So this is not playable. So I'm going to a quick overview of the variations that never changed since I published video in 1980s. So queen d7, bishop f5 is okay. So there are many good moves for white. White is completely developed. Black has developed only the queen. On e6, we could go knight d4, or maybe even knight h4, and this will be absolutely devastating for black. With a king on d8, 0 pieces developed, and a queen in the center. So this is not acceptable. So the diagnosis that after queen d7, white is doing very well. So now let's look at the other move. e6. This is an interesting move, and I would say the possible continuation here for white. I was recommending bishop c4 because after knight takes c3, d takes c3, bishop c5, white is doing very well after queen g4. You see attacking pawn g7, and if castle, then bishop h6. If g6, then bishop g5, and on bishop e7, knight f3. White is also doing very well with a pawn down and great position. But I do not recommend to play this variation anyway. The reason why. Now, my own recommendation, I'm taking down from use, and because black has knight c6 move, attacking the e5 pawn. That's why we don't want to play this variation. And now knight f3 will not be appropriate because bishop takes c5 and queen g4 is not possible. And if white plays bishop f4, then black has very powerful continuation. Bishop takes c5, and on queen g4, there is a g5 move that gives black an edge. What can happen here is if queen takes g5, queen takes g5, bishop takes, now rook g8. And you see e5 pawn hangs, bishop hangs, pawn on g2 weak. Well, maybe not immediate knight takes e5 because of bishop f6, but even this could be okay for black because of knight g4 move. So this is not good continuation. If bishop takes on g5, then simply rook g8. And white has too many things hanging. Pawn on g2, pawn on e5, bishop on c4, bishop on d8. So based on this variation, I completely took bishop c4 out of the circulation. What do we do instead? We go knight takes d5, ed, and then d4. That will guarantee us some advantage. Not very big, possibly, knight f3, and we have fine game. Everyone, including myself, will be satisfied with this position. So the most competitive option for black is c6, and I was recommending bishop c4, after d6, queen b3. That was an old recommendation, but here is where we make significant change. The best move for black is knight d7, and I will only go with the best moves because I don't believe you should play any variation in theory, hoping your opponent to make a terrible mistake. And here, we had in old edition, knight takes d5, knight takes c5, knight c7 check, queen takes c7, bishop takes f7. Those are the absolute best moves from both sides. And after king d8, queen e3, in my opinion, black has an advantage after bishop f5 move. Black's king is misplaced, but white's bishop on f7 is a little bit bothering for white because after e6 move it may get trapped. Black has developed most of its pieces. Knight d3 threat is coming up, and white's development is very poor. Black is better in this position. So what do? We bring this variation to life, back to life. And here I will show you the way to play, and I played couple of games against some very strong players on the internet. When I tried to look in the database some games on this variation, I found only one game that I will show you briefly that white won. Actually, two games. One of them white won, and white had bad position after the opening. Obviously, we don't want to do that. And the move that I'm recommending and variation that I'm suggesting, I double, triple checked, and even more, has never ever happened in a chess theory. This is the advantage of working hand to hand with world's most powerful programs. Variation I would recommend is guaranteeing white edge and the range of the edge for little better to nearly winning, depending on the way black plays. So the move is bishop takes d5. It's a counterintuitive move, but white is banking on the development. So bishop takes d5, cd, and now e takes d6. Well, black is forced to retake because knight takes c5 is not going to be very appealing for black after queen b5 check. And on knight d7, knight takes d5. White is clearly better. So after ed, black plays ed, and knight takes d5. Well, now let's get to the game that I saw on internet. There was cd was played. White mistakenly went for pawn hunting. Bishop takes d6. Queen takes d5. Knight c5. b4. Okay, b4 is the best move. If white doesn't play b4 and decides to simply continue a development, then after castling and castling, black has absolutely tremendous position. If queen goes anywhere, I don't know, knight d3 will be good. Black has, for a price of a pawn, they have very powerful outpost for knight on d3 and two powerful bishops. White is in a bad shape. Knight g5 will be met by bishop f5. So black played poorly after queen takes d5. They played queen e7 check, and we don't need to even see this game. This is the way not to play for white. So c takes d is a bad move. And here comes counterintuitive move, knight takes d5. Let's talk about this position. How can this be good for white? Black has two bishops. Development is about equal. So why can white be better here? White is better because, first of all, dc it's a bad move because of queen g3, and it's very hard to deal with knight c7 check threat. So knight takes c5. This is nearly forced. Queen f3. And that's exactly what happened in my game. After queen f3, bishop e7. And what can happen after that? Knight e2, simple development. Simple development. White is going to have, no matter what black does, they will have better position. d4, knight e6, castling and rook e8. Well, I have to point here that move like bishop d7 will be met by winning a b pawn by white. And I looked carefully at this position, and for me, very hard to prove that black has compensation for a deficit of a pawn. White is doing just fine with extra pawn. That's why bishop d7 cannot be recommended. Rook e8, rook e1, knight c7, knight takes c7, queen takes c7. And how can white be better here? White is clearly better because they have possible knight c3 move here. Well, on the other hand, can black do anything different? Well, we just do bishop d2. Well, black is trying to develop as well. Now knight f4. And white is doing very well. After d5, well, taking this pawn maybe not that great of an idea. Bishop d6 is possible, maybe queen d7, and then bishop f6, although white is still better. But however, this move, queen g3, is also very powerful. Actually, that's what happened in my game. Rook ac8, knight h5, and position is very, very difficult for black. Even if black played differently after knight c7. Well, knight c7 is the critical point. Better move is rook e8. Now, after rook e8, what should we do here? Rook e1, and that's where black should play knight c7. But bishop f8 is a possible continuation. Bishop e3, bishop d7, knight e2 c3, bishop c6. White is better here because of centralized knight on d5, and it's very hard to say that, oh, black has two bishops, because one of two bishops is bishop on f8, and you cannot call bishop on f8 as part of the black's advantage. Absolutely not. So after bishop f8, this position is still better for white. Centralized knight, we could go queen g3 and possibly double rooks on e-file after that. What can be done after bishop e3? White goes a4. a4 is the other way to play. Now white wants to go b4 and b5. a4, knight c7, and b4. White's knight is pinned, but no matter how you look at it, white is better. b5 is coming. And if bishop takes on d5, it's very difficult to remove white's queen from centralized position. So white is doing very, very well. About the knight c7 move, I want to analyze just a little more after rook e1 and knight c7. Instead of bishop f8. So knight c7. When we take on c7, this is okay for white. Actually, in my game was slightly different. The best way to play is knight takes bishop, queen takes, and bishop d2. And on bishop e6, knight f4. That's exactly the position from my game. d5, queen g3. What I did after knight c7, I took on e7, the bishop in this position. I took on e7 and not on c7, as I mentioned. So after knight takes e7, queen takes e7, bishop d2. You see now white's knight on e2 is pinned. Bishop d2, preparing to jump with the e2 knight. Bishop d2, bishop e6, knight f4. Black is already experiencing severe pressure. Knight f4, d5. Now b7 pawn is hanging. d5, queen g3, rook ac8. That's exactly what happened in my game. Knight h5, attacking the g7 pawn. The f6 was played first. And after bishop h6, now g6. Knight g7, and you see how black's position slightly deteriorates. Rook e d8, rook ac1. White has full court pressure. Now rook takes c7 is a possible threat, picking up the knight on e6. And after rook ac1, queen f7, now rook c3. Well, I have to point that rook takes c7 now will not work because white is going to win the piece but may get in some kind of a danger here. So the way we should play, rook c3, and that's what was played. And after rook c3, king h8, rook c to e3, you see how dominating white's pieces are. g5. Now, this move just threatens to win a piece. g5, but after g5, we cannot take this knight, because knight takes, rook takes, queen will take. And now, you see, the point of g5 move is to block white h6 bishop from taking the rook on c1. But after g5 and h4, black simply resigned here. The beauty of this variation is, actually there are several powerful points why you should play that. Because first of all, there is no word in chess theory about this variation. There are no games, and you guaranteed to play 100% safely and try to capitalize on your better piece placement. In a worst case scenario, you will still have slight advantage. There are not too many openings that you can have luxury of getting variations like this. And that's what I strongly would recommend you play. Well, I would recommend you. This is not the main line of Alekhine, but this is very credible line, and this is a good substitution for the line that I had in my video in 1980s, Crushing Lines. The other opening where we had some very interesting suggestions in original Crushing Lines video was Panov Botvinnik attack in Caro-Can. So what we had, now I'm going to give you the updated and upgraded version of it. E4, C6, D4, D5, ED, CD, C4. Knight F6, Knight C3, and here black practically has three moves: E6, G6, and Knight C6. Line we were discussing is with the most, by far the most popular move, which is E6. And it went like Knight F3, Bishop E7, C takes D, Knight takes D5, Bishop D3, castling, castling. And that's another position after Knight C6 and Rook E1, where black has a couple of choices. There are Knight F6 or the Bishop F6. Well, move B6 is not a good move because after Knight takes D5, black immediately gets in trouble. After ED, there is a Bishop takes H7 move, winning a pawn simply for white and taking the knight on C6. That's not acceptable for black, and taking with the queen is not much better because same Queen C2 or maybe even Bishop E4 first, attacking the queen. It's the same concept on a Queen D6, now Queen C2 attacking the knight and H7 pawn. So you shouldn't expect this to happen in your game because people that play that, they would play one of the Bishop F6 or Knight F6 moves. Well, Bishop F6 move is an interesting move. There is some theory about it, and final word that white has some advantage. One of the promising moves is Bishop E4. But since we want, the idea is that we want to bring you some exciting lines that are not very popular, is Knight F6 move. Now white plays A3. Well, this move should be met by B6. This is the most natural move to develop bishop on B7. And now white has a couple of choices. Actually, this is the option for you. You can go to a little better endgame, or you can go to exciting middle game. And the choices start with the moves Bishop C2 or the Knight E5. Knight E5 is the line that will get you, with correct play on both sides, that will get you to better endgame. Well, black has to be very careful here. And for example, move like Knight takes D4 after Bishop E3 will create very serious problems for black. Now white is threatening Bishop takes D4. Followed by Bishop takes H7 and winning the queen. So black is in a serious trouble here. They cannot play Knight F5. Knight F5 actually they can play, but it's pretty bad after Queen F3. We don't want to spend much time analyzing this. This is known as very bad choice for black. So after knight e5, if not knight takes d4, then bishop b7. So this is choice one, your choice of playing knight e5, and now very strong move, bishop a6. Black has choices to take on a6 or play queen c8. And of course, knight takes e5 is not acceptable because of bishop takes b7, and black loses material on rook b8 taking on e5. So let's look at two possible continuations, ones that we mentioned. First, bishop takes a6. That's not a good choice because white immediately gets sizable advantage after knight takes e6, knight takes e7, and after bishop g5, this pin with the bishop on g5 is very, very difficult to overcome by black. Anything like rook d8 may run into d5. Black has serious problems. Other than that, I don't know, what move like h6 will fail because of knight d5, and black is totally lost. That leaves black with only one valid option, which is queen c8. But then, after general exchanges, bishop takes b7 and knight takes c6, white plays d5, and you see that pawn on d5 cannot be taken because bishop on e7 is loose. Black simply loses a piece. So the best move for black is queen to c4 to keep protecting the e6 pawn. Then after queen e2, queen takes e2, rook takes e2, white is going to have some advantage. They can win a pawn, but after bishop c5, I don't think it's a good idea to take the pawn on e6 because of knight g4. So white should play something like bishop g5 or bishop e3, having minimal advantage over weak pawn on e6. If you really want to win, that's not how you should play. But now, let's get to the real quest for a serious advantage in middle game. The not bishop a6, but in this position, if white doesn't play bishop a6, so then there is no good way to play for advantage. So choice white has here, instead of knight e5, bishop c2. This is very, very tricky move. We had this move mentioned in a Crushing Lines, but now let me give you some update. Bishop b7 will be met by queen d3. And here, natural move like rook c8 will be disastrous for black. Black is nearly lost after d5. And you see knight cannot take on d5 because queen h7 mate. And if pawn takes bishop g5, threatening to take on f6 and mating on h7. g6 is out of question because rook takes e7 is devastating. If knight takes, simply taking on f6, and if queen takes, knight takes d5, and total destruction. Well, besides g6, there is only one move, knight e4, and that too leads to terrible consequences. Knight takes e4, de, queen takes e4. Now there is the threat of mate on h7, and g6 has to be played. Originally, on the video, I said that white gets winning advantage after bishop takes e7. They get winning endgame. But now, after bishop takes e7, black has to take with the queen. Queen takes e7. Knight takes e7. Rook takes e7. Bishop takes f3 has to be played. And after bishop b3, bishop a8, and rook takes a7, white has big advantage. They have extra pawn, very powerful rook on a7, weakness on f7. That should be enough to win. But in this position, white has even better move, which is queen h4, which should win game in next 2 to 3 moves. Now, the threatening the bishop on e7, and after taking on g5, black is absolutely lost. Well, this is like a 2 winning continuations, and obviously this is not good. Now, let me mention, in this position, after these variations become more or less known, there was big suggestion for black. Bishop a6 is a very strong move, and there were games played with bishop a6, and black did very well. So white tried different kinds of things, and they were not successful. However, we have some news for you. News is that white has an advantage here, and I will show you in a moment how, but with none of the previously tried attempts. b4 was tried previously, bishop g5 was tried, even bishop e3, but the move I would suggest, bishop f4, with completely different idea. If you ask anyone, what is the most natural move for black here? Of course, it's rook c8. And here comes unexpected solution. d5. This immediately sheds light on many things. For example, this pawn has to be taken by the pawn. Taking by knight is not good. In fact, it's pretty bad. Knight takes, and you will see if queen takes, it looks so good for black. They exchanged queens, they have extra pawns, but yet it's very, very bad for black. After bishop f5, immediately you will see that black is gonna lose material, big time. Rook is hanging, This is the continuation that was missed by the people who played that for white. This has never happened, by the way. On rook d8, bishop c7, and eventually rook has to go to a8. Rook e8 is out of question, of course. And when rook goes to a8, then white simply attacks the knight, and then the bishop is hanging. So this is, for example, something like bishop f6 will lead to bishop takes c6 and bishop d6. White has big advantage. So let's go back. As I mentioned already, knight takes d5 gives white big advantage, so ed has to be played. And now after ed, here is what's going to happen. Black's rook is attacked. The move is forced. Queen a4. You'll see that almost every move is forced now. Bishop b7 and rook a d1. Let's look at this position. Black has an extra pawn. Just compare position of white's pawn of pieces and black's pieces. White has a huge advantage. Every piece is placed perfectly. Black has difficulties just untangling their pieces. I don't think there is a big problem getting back a pawn on d5. This is something that will create serious problem for black. And now going back to this position and move bishop f4. I don't know how black can maintain equality. Bishop on f4 is very powerful. This is good suggestion. And as I said, every line that will bring you on this DVD does not guarantee big advantage or does not guarantee the incredible innovation, turning point of the opening. No. What we do here, we're trying to show you, I'm trying to show you lines that are very credible, very lively, gives you some advantage, and also in case of a little misstep by black, it will lead to immediate disaster for them. So this is another way of playing one of the interesting novelties. And novelty is bishop f4 with the idea of d5. Well, maybe my analysis here are not complete. They are 100% credible and double-checked and triple-checked. I double-checked on many engines, and they are 100% reliable. But unfortunately, I don't have the luxury to bring every variation everywhere what white should do. I gave you the critical points of it, and the rest you may have to do by yourself. There is one more line to add to this. In this position, as we mentioned, bishop a6 was the latest recommendation for black, and we already said we'll play bishop f4. And we also mentioned that bishop b7 will be met by queen d3 with a devastating threat of d5. So suppose black plays g6. How do we continue an attack here? And how can we get use of bishop on c2 and queen on d3 doubling on the diagonal that is solid blocked by black with g6? We simply go bishop h6, rook e8, and rook a to d1. White is perfectly mobilized its pieces, and black has to do the same, which is not simple at all. Rook c8, by far the most natural move. And let me tell you about this position. I mentioned it a couple of times on my previous DVDs, but I don't think you guys have all my DVDs. So since it's about exciting lines and continuations, I want to recommend here knight g5 move, which is known in the theory and what was also known that this move was criticized by number of theoreticians. And the reason why this move was criticized was because of knight g4. Now, white's bishop on h6 has no good square, and protecting it is not good because knight will be hanging. But the problem with knight g4 move that it loses. That's a big problem. Knight takes f7. This is a forced win by white. And now queen f3 check. Knight has to come back to f6, and here is d5. Pawn absolutely has to be taken. Well, because if knight moves, black simply loses a queen. And now white has to make the only move that wins, because there is very tempting rook takes d5 that in reality loses the game. White looks so good because you may think if queen goes to c7, then white has crushing rook d7, attacking the queen, and believe it or not, after queen takes d7, bishop b3 is a mate. Well, black can interpose the queen, which white will take with the bishop, and it will be a checkmate. But rook takes d5 looks like a crushing move. In reality, it loses, because after knight d4, everything is changed. Now black simplifies position, having big material advantage, and white is totally lost. And then again, that's why we said bishop b3 is a winning move, because on knight a5 there is no better move. Bishop takes d5, bishop takes d5, rook takes d5, and now queen is hanging, and whatever black does, they are totally lost. Bishop d6 is losing for black, as well as queen c7. Actually, knight takes d5. And now bishop d6 loses because of rook takes c8, queen takes c8, and queen takes f6. That's devastating. And so is every other move. Let's say in this position, black makes some attempt, like queen d6. White needs to approach this position calmly and not play knight takes e7 or knight takes f6. They are both terrible moves because on knight takes e7, rook takes e7, we have a different winner, which is black, because of back rank problem. Same thing will happen on knight takes f6, bishop takes f6. Black wins. But after g4, the same moves, knight takes e7 and knight takes f6, in effect, and they will win now for white because there is no back rank mate and black has no good choices. White wins. This line proves once more that in the position here where black has choices between bishop a6 and bishop b7, they have serious problem to figure out how to maintain playable position without getting immediate disaster. And this is highly recommended to play for someone who wants to explore new attacking possibilities. So I think this is a good suggestion to get in your opening repertoire. Big chapter in our first video on crushing lines was dedicated to a French defense. Well, French defense with bishop d2 variation. Bishop b4, e5, and on c5, bishop d2. Now, some things are stay the same, but some things have changed in French defense. I developed it further and with the great help of my dedicated friend Ripka, and I analyzed, and now I have definite conclusion. The line is good. Bishop d2 is still good. We have to make several adjustments, including additional option for black. Well, we had as a main option knight e7, and that's what we're gonna do first. In knight e7 line, I want to go through some changes that I will show you now. Knight b5, bishop takes d2, queen takes d2, castling. This is most controversial line and most challenging line to play for black. Knight c6, knight f3, and now a6. Well, we play knight d6. This is still, we are going through unchanged part. Black takes on d4, white has to play bishop d3, and now f6, attacking the pawn on e5, castling, f takes c, f takes c. Now, this position was well analyzed by us, but not to the perfection. Well, we mentioned that knight takes e5 is not a good idea to play for black, and this is unchanged because knight takes e5, rook takes f1, rook takes f1, queen takes d6, queen f4, creating the threat of the checkmate on f8, and bishop d7 is also leading to checkmate, because queen f8 check, followed by mate on f7. So the only move that black has here is knight f5, but then all that we had in original DVD like 13 or 14 years ago. Queen g5, and black can resign because there is no defense to rook f6. For example, on bishop d7, there is rook f6, and there is no defense to rook takes h6. This is easy win for white. Now, what has changed? Couple of things changed. First of all, the main move is rook f3. And we were taking with the rook, and on knight takes e5, we played rook h3, which is incorrect. And that's where we revise it. Now, on dedicated DVD dedicated to French defense, I explained it, how we changed it. And that's how we play. We play queen f4. And this is big advantage for white. Knight takes f3, gf, knight c6, and here queen f7, king h8, and for a long time this position was evaluated by us as a draw. After queen h5, now queen cannot defend on h7 because queen h5 creates double threat. Queen takes h7 mate and also knight f7 fork. But after g6, bishop takes g6, this is a forced draw. After queen g8, knight f7, and as amazing as it looks, white has nothing better than a perpetual check. But what has changed? White has nearly winning position here. Instead of playing queen h5, the winning move is king h1, creating threat of rook g1. And only move for black is queen g8. Well, I don't want to go through every detail, but those are the absolute best moves, and you will have no problem to verify it with any software engines. So now queen g8, queen f4, creating knight f7 threat. And now knight d8 is forced, and after rook g1, this is a forced win for white. White has very few pieces, 4 pieces, but they are all optimally active, and they are very, very dangerously placed. And on bishop d7, killing move is rook g5 to prepare rook h5. Not rook g3, because next move rook h3 will be met by e5 for black. So the winning move is rook g5, and no matter what black does, so g6 for example, will lead to complete destruction after queen g4, threatening bishop takes g6, and there is absolutely no defense. On queen f8, bishop takes g6. White wins outright without any problem. And if queen takes d6 will be met by bishop h7. And this is a forced win. Now, there is a one little problem. Actually, it was a big problem for a while. But luckily, I never updated any French defense until I found a complete solution to that problem. Look at this position. In this position, e7 knight, black's e7 knight, was on h6. Black would have had nearly winning position even after knight takes e5. So, as few games are played, few players playing bishop d2 variation. So black came with innovation, with improvement in the very early stage. After e4, e6, d4, d5, knight c3, bishop b4, e5, c5, bishop d2, knight h6. This is very serious improvement. Now I don't like position after knight b5 because bishop takes d2, queen takes d2, castle and f4 will be met by a6 or even knight c6, which is transposition, and now a6, knight d6, cd. With knight on h6, take my word for it, that whole variation is going down the hill. So it's very bad for white. So what should we do? And for a long, long time, this was bothering me. Finally, there is a solution. After knight h6, in this position, we don't play knight b5. So what should we do here? Let me tell you this. My duty is to find playable and preferably better position for white. And if I don't, we have to dismiss completely this variation. And since this variation is not played a lot for white, and we have nowhere to look for help, we have to invent the help. Knight h6 is a serious challenge and requires completely new approach. And the way to play it and the best continuation, there are a couple of tries for white, but let me give you just one that is being proven to be good. Bishop takes h6. Well, it's kind of unusual to play bishop d2 and then bishop takes h6. Pawn takes h6, and now a3. Taking on c3, of course, is not good for black, because white has very solid center, and there is absolutely no justification or compensation for completely ruined king side of black. So, same thing I should say about c takes d. On c takes d, we simply take on b4 and take on c3, and if black attacks two pawns, we can always go queen david 4, and on knight c6, bishop b5. White has big positional advantage. So, the only sensible move in this position for black is bishop a5. And after bishop a5, we play d takes c, which forces black to take on c3. Black cannot allow b4. So, after bishop takes c3, bc, at least black has something to play for. All these ruined pawns of white. Triple pawn plus e5. But black has bad bishop on c8 and totally ruined king side. In this position, after bishop takes c3 and bc, best move is queen a5. we go queen d2, and now queen takes c5. Also possible is knight d7. Well, okay. After queen takes c5, we have to play simply knight f3. And we have no problem maintaining the advantage. We can easily castle on the king side. Black has no place to castle. Bishop is coming to d3, and h6 pawn is going to be potentially big hazard for black. So queen takes c5 is not the best choice. So let's try knight d7. This way, black has an option, black attacking e5 pawn, and has an option to take on c5 with the knight. And there is a second time white loses tempo. They've just played queen d2, now we go queen d4. There is explanation for that. We didn't want to go queen d4 while knight was on b8. And we cannot go queen d4 now and allow knight c6, obviously. So we went queen d2, and on knight d7, queen d4. We accomplished what we played for. Now, if knight takes c5, we defended our center and we defended our queen side. Now we quickly develop and castle, and black is going to have to deal with big structural damage on the king side. We want bishop d3, rook g8, for example. We simply can go g3, and on b6, knight e2. I like for knight to protect c3, maybe go to f4 potentially. White has, in my opinion, serious advantage. And on bishop a6, we can go rook b1. We have to go rook b1 because we cannot castle now. Because bishop takes d3 and fork. So we make one prophylactic move. And after rook b1, in every case, white has an advantage. For example, queen takes a3 castle. Bishop takes d3, pawn takes. Black exchange their bad bishop for our good bishop. And now they have to prepare escape for their queen back to e7. And after knight d7, queen e3, attacking h6, h5, and now knight d4. Black's position is very dangerous. I can't imagine who wouldn't like to play this position for white. There is a big potential threat of knight b5 attacking queen and going to d6. Also, potential of f4 and f5. And there is no potential for black to ever have their king in safety. After finding this possibility, I can tell you with a great confidence that bishop d2 system lives with some adjustments that I just showed you, together with the previous analysis, what we had on knight e7. Altogether, we have very solid system. And to tell you the truth, I don't even know. Knowing all about this variation, I don't know what is the right way for black to fight for equality. Maybe I'm overly optimistic, but it doesn't matter. I'm showing variations that back up my optimism. And if somebody thinks differently, please speak up. So this is conclusion of all my presentation on French defense with the crushing lines. Remember, this is not the main line. It shouldn't guarantee you a big advantage because even the main line doesn't. This is line that is 100% credible and variations back it up, and I like it and I strongly recommend it. In addition to these three openings, I want to suggest some novelty and some interesting idea in another opening. Another opening that we never covered in crushing lines decade and a half ago, but I think it's very, very interesting. And I have no doubt in my mind that a lot of you guys will use it because it's exciting, it's credible, and it's new. This is about center counter. In center, e4, d5, ed, queen takes d5, knight c3, queen a5. Now, well, the main move is d4 here. And there's a lot of theory about knight f6, knight f3, then c6. But there is a difference if we play knight f3 first. Although theory does not recommend to play knight f3 before playing d4 because that gives black an opportunity to play early bishop g4. Well as they also can play bishop f5, of course. Now, on bishop f5 and on bishop g4, we have the same idea. We played slightly differently, but let's see bishop f5 first. b4. This is not a crazy move. This is not, I would never recommend crazy move. Every move I recommend, first I have to have an explanation, logical explanation that I can back it up with. b4 is playing on exposed position of the queen. Taking on b4 is not that good because of rook b1 and pawn on b7. And in case of queen b6, knight d5, this is actually very, very creative play for black. Queen d6, knight e3 attacking the bishop. And on bishop g6, bishop b2. I like this position for white very much. Queen takes b4 will be met by rook b1. Black has to continue making moves with the queen, falling way behind in development. And this is real bad now. Queen a4 will be met by bishop takes g7 with a threat of bishop b5 check, and queen d6 will give white overwhelming advantage in development. So this is not recommended for black. So this is one idea, to go b4. See, that's interesting. Now let's look at bishop g4. On bishop g4, what we would do, we would go h3, and on bishop h5, we will go b4. That's, again, very powerful. And remember, we have to go h3 first, because if we go b4, this is total waste of time, because black has very comfortable queen h5 move, and pawn on b4 looks silly. After h3 and bishop h5, black doesn't have this comfortable place for the queen. And after queen takes b4, for example, rook b1, queen d6. This is very interesting now. Now we go rook takes b7. a6 has to be played because threat of knight b5 is very serious. And after a6, white develops a very strong initiative. We simply play bishop e2. Now we are not pressured to get huge attack right away because we are not down a pawn. We are ahead in development and we're going to get substantial advantage. Knight f6, simply castling, and after knight c6, we go knight g5, and this position cannot be ever recommended for black. White can go knight e4, next move followed by bishop b2. Black is struggling to finish development. White is clearly better. Well, then again, what to do for black? And here is another option that may be interesting. Knight c6. Now, knight c6 move is very interesting because if white goes d4, then we're going to enter some sharp variation that is very playable and credible for black. But after knight c6, we don't go d4. d4, if we go d4 pawn becomes a target. After castling and knight f6, we don't do that. We go simply bishop b5. And I give you some sample variations that are very, very interesting. Bishop b5, bishop d7, and again b4. Queen takes b4, and rook b1. Queen a5. Now we simply retreat, attacking b7 pawn, and if black castles long, we don't take on f7. No, because we didn't sacrifice pawn just to take it back. No, we will go here, queen e2, and we're going to castle later, and we have open file. So after queen e2, we're going to have very strong initiative. Knight f6 will follow by castling. Well, just to give you roughly to tell you what is going to happen, black is already on the verge of total destruction. Queen has to go on a6 and some d3 and bishop e3 followed by rook b1, not to mention that queen is standing on the same diagonal with white bishop. Black is in serious trouble. So what we have here is after knight c6, we play bishop b5, and on bishop d7, we go b4. This is very, very strong for white. And now we're going to make most expected move in this position, c6. c6 is a very common move in this variation of center counter. And after c6, approximate variation, what may happen here is bishop c4. We don't go d4 yet. Bishop f5. That's how they play, and they go e6 and knight f6. And while we keep pawn on d2, again b4. This is very, very credible. Queen takes b4. Let me show you how you can get an attack out of nowhere. We're hardly ahead in development. The only thing is working for us is that black's queen is sticking out. So we go knight e5, attacking f7, e6, rook b1, queen has to move, queen d6, attacking our knight. d4, we're threatening b7 pawn. Black has clever move knight d7. Now taking on b7, of course, is not good because black is going to take white's knight on e5, but we go bishop f4. Knight takes e5, bishop takes e5. Look at this initiative. All of a sudden, white has every piece out. We just tried nearly the best continuation for black. And you see how black will be struggling now. Queen d7. Now knight b5. Threatening knight c7. Of course, taking this knight is out of question. And now after rook c8, we have knight d6 check. Of course, knight must be taken. And we play bishop takes g7. And we win the rook. However, black has a chance to trap the bishop. King f7. And here is the key move, bishop d3, that wins the game. After knight e7, queen h5 check, black is lost. King g8, bishop takes f6. On bishop g6, simply bishop takes, followed by queen h7. And knight g6 will allow immediate queen h7. Black is totally lost. This is an example of instant initiative. So, of course, there is no guarantee that over the period of time, we are not going to change evaluation in one of these variations. But I'm very confident that the evaluation we just gave to these positions is going to stand for a long, long time because it's been proven by powerful engine. Of course, it's not a Rybka's idea to play b4 in so many different variations, and this idea is normally not something Rybka will stand for. But once I forced her to keep doing analysis, she supported the variations that she gave. She supported my opinion about it. And I'm very glad that it worked. And you have yourselves very, very interesting way of developing initiative. And it's not psychotic attack. Every attack that we develop is based on better development, on quick placement of the pieces on active positions. And that's what we are sacrificing for. We are not playing for any trap. We are not doing any anti-positional moves. Everything is very, very credible, very solid, and I strongly recommend you to try it. I think I will have very many followers for these variations, and I look forward for you guys to write me what you think about it and your opinions about it. So have a very nice time playing those suggestions. And thank you again very, very much.